All right. I'm delighted to welcome you all this evening to this open meeting of the BJ SPSA Racial Justice Task Force. I am Martha, is Jim Melchiori from SPSA, and of course our special guest, Aisha Stevens Hamilton. I want to tell you just a little bit about the task force and then turn it over to Jim to introduce Aisha. So the BJ SPSA Racial Justice Task Force has been in existence for, I guess, 5.5 or 6 years, close to 6 years, shortly after the 2016 election. We formed and decided after some complicated process to focus on issues of mass incarceration. And about 4 years ago, we made the decision to partner with AFC, Families with Incarcerated Loved Ones. We've been doing so ever since. Some of you, I suspect, may have met Sophie Elijah, who was the executive director of AFJ when she came to speak at BJ, along with 1 or 2 others from AFJ, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I forget exactly when. And then shortly after COVID started, she did a lunchtime talk for many of us. Anyway, during COVID, AFJ and we on the task force have been in our connections with them have been mostly focused on addressing the conditions in New York State prisons, as well as pressing for the reopening of the prisons to visits and improving the conditions of visits. And now that things are starting to open up a bit, AFJ is taking up again the issue of restoring the right to vote for those incoming on shortly before, I guess about a year before COVID hit, as well as now initiating a pretty new campaign to close the prison at Attica. So those are the main things that AFJ is working on now, and those of us from the task force who are have been attending the meetings, have been working on those issues. And that's how we met Aisha, who's a member of AFJ, and Jim is going to take it from here.
Yes, as Martha mentioned, after the pandemic began, we began to meet weekly, every Thursday night for 2 hours on Zoom. And our group, our community has just grown incredibly since then. We often have 30 to 35 people with us on these meetings, predominantly women, predominantly people who are directly affected by mass incarceration, just amazing folks. And one of them is Aisha Stevens Hamilton. Aisha is a mom of 2. She is a production director at Other Press, which is an independent publisher. She's a native of the Bronx who grew up in Harlem and is now living in the Bronx. And she is one of the 3 editors of this amazing book that we have been reading called Unwritten, Stories from Behind and Beyond the Bars. Now, none of you came to listen to me talk. You wanted to hear Aisha. So with great honor and pleasure, I introduce to you Aisha Stevens Hamilton. Thank you for being with us, Aisha.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Martha and Jim, for that incredible introduction. I am so grateful to be here with you all tonight. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The introduction that Jim just gave of myself, I'll expand a little bit more. My name is Aisha Stevens Hamilton. And yes, I am a mom of 2 amazing boys. And I am the wife of an amazing man who is currently incarcerated in New York State Prison. The reason I'm here tonight is because, as Jim mentioned, I am one of the co-editors of the book Unwritten. And the book came about because I was a Beyond the Bars fellow through the Columbia University Center for Justice for the 2020-21 cohort. And usually when you are a fellow through Beyond the Bars, the main focus on the fellowship is for you to work the Beyond the Bars conference. Of course, during the time of our cohort, it was COVID, therefore everything was remote. So we literally did our entire fellowship on this lovely screen Zoom here. So as you can see, maybe I feel a little bit comfortable here. That's because, you know, I've been doing a lot of my work via Zoom for the last 2 years. So I'm just, again, thank you for having me here. So in our fellowship, we were put into little groups. There were many groups that were established to us throughout the social justice movement. And some of those groups consisted of the Prison to Pipeline group. They consisted of education of prison. And I happen to be placed in the group of families impacted by incarceration. And ironically, I am an individual currently impacted by incarceration. So it was an honor to be in that group. But being in the group, we thought about, okay, well, now that we have a project to do, what are we going to do? And I see that one of my co-editors is actually on the call, and I just want to give him a shout out. Shout out to you, Ashley. He is an incredible person, one of the co-editors, and him, myself, and Armando, the other co-editor, we had many brainstorming sessions of what can we do for our project? And immediately we knew that we wanted to accomplish 3 things. We wanted to incorporate the incarcerated person. We wanted it to have a positive impact. And we wanted to have a give back aspect to the people who participate and also be kind of sort of our legacy project. So upon many brainstorms, you know, we thought, well, what can we do? And originally we wanted to do something to solely focus on women and their families that are impacted by incarceration, just because we know, or specifically I know from visiting and my work that I'm doing with prison reform, women are unfortunately one of the underserved demographics when it comes to incarceration. There's a vast difference of visiting when it comes to seeing women. And we really wanted to support them with this project. We didn't have a connection with the women's facility. So we just thought to just make it overall for everyone. We had to align ourselves with an organization that was kind of doing work that was aligning themselves with families. And ironically, as Martha and Jim said, I was already doing work with the Alliance for Families of Justice. So it just made sense that, okay, whatever we do, we're going to incorporate AFJ in there because they are doing incredible things for families that are impacted by incarceration. So in our brainstorming session, you know, one of my co-editors, you know, said, let's just write a book. And I thought, a book? Are you sure? Like in my mind, because, you know, in the fellowship, it was all about us, you know, learning things about social justice and criminal justice. And yes, we had this wonderful moment where we would have this time where we did this thing called Get to Know Your Fellows, but I hadn't had my Get to Know Your Fellow opportunity at that moment. So they didn't really get to know me and what I do. So when my co-editor said, let's write a book, I was a little hesitant because, as Jim mentioned, I've worked in publishing for the last 16 years. And although I don't work in publishing doing the traditional work, what many would think of when they think of publishing, you always think of editors, you think of marketing, you think of publicity. But really, and this is no big up to myself, but the meat and potatoes of publishing is the production. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have a physical book, or you don't have the manufacturing for everything that you're trying to promote and sell and talk about, it won't exist. So my job likes to call me the spine of the organization because I hold everything together. And I'm very grateful, you know, for my job and career because they have given me resources that allowed me to kind of have Unwritten come to fruition. So in our brainstorming sessions, we thought, well, what can we do? And as I said, we wanted 3 things. We wanted to have it be positive, give back, and have the incarcerated individual a part of it. We thought, how could we break this book out so that it makes sense? And again, many, many brainstorming sessions. And I love the way that we broke out our book, because we broke it into 3 parts. We have a section that says behind the bars, stories that are behind the bars. And all of those stories consist of individuals that are currently incarcerated in New York State. And it was very important for us to have a variety of voices, because we know the power of storytelling. You know, at the end of the day, everyone wants to be heard and everyone has a story to tell. And we just wanted to have a place where we could uplift these voices, give them a place to share their stories, and just tell and say what they want to say. And I'm so, so grateful with all the entries that we received, because wow, I mean, just reading some of these stories, it was, these individuals were so vulnerable, so passionate, and just so giving of themselves. And it's very powerful to read. And then we have a section called Beyond the Bars. And that section consists of community members, family members, people that are currently impacted or recently entered into society from formerly being incarcerated. And their stories too are powerful, because they're not only sharing their experience of what it was when they were incarcerated, but sharing their experience of what it is when they've come home. And we all know that being incarcerated, you kind of have that scarlet letter on you. So, you know, to hear what the experience or what the life has been for those that have re-entered is a powerful thing as well. And then we have at the back of the book, our resource center, which has all of the information for the Alliance for Families of Justice, AFJ, where you can get involved. You know, they have amazing resources for not only family members, but for formerly incarcerated individuals, for people that are coming home, programs. They have a family empowerment circle that they do weekly. As Jim and Martha said, we have our family visiting policy meeting that we've been doing for the last 2 years, every Thursday for 2 hours, coming up with strategies and initiatives to really, really move the needle when it comes to this thing we have of mass incarceration. So I'm really, really grateful of how Unwritten has come about, but I know that this is just the beginning, because as I said, this is something that my editors and I thought and looked at as our legacy. We really, really, truly wanted this to be something that maybe other fellowships would want to pick up and do. And thankfully, that has been the case. You know, for this fellowship, the 2021-2022 cohort, they are doing group work again. And there are some groups, a group specifically that has reached out to us to ask, hey, you know, we saw your book. What did it take to get that done? And it's been so incredible to share, you know, my information, share resources, to see what else is to come when it comes to mass incarceration. So as I said, you know, I'm very grateful to be here tonight to, you know, just share some stories from the book, to share a little bit of my story, and be with everyone tonight and talk about alternatives to mass incarceration, because they do exist. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aisha. I just want to remind people, if you have questions that you'd like to pose to Aisha or have us discuss afterwards, put them into the chat. Jim and I will kind of try to moderate them and present them to Aisha after this first part, so she can respond to them. And Aisha's going to read some from the book. I had a question for you. I don't know if I could ask, maybe I'll ask it now and you can decide whether to answer it now or later, but did anything surprise you? Did anything surprising come out of this process of writing the book?
Yes, many things. One specifically is understanding that you can do hard things. You know, me being the only publishing person in our group, you know, I kind of took the leadership role in this project. And I did it happily because, I've worked in this field for so long that I, had resources at my expense. But another thing that surprised me is the willingness of these individuals that are incarcerated to share their stories. When we first reached out, I was a little hesitant of, how could we approach them? Like, what should we ask them to write? Because not everyone is willing and wanting to share, their lives. So we understood that we had to, be kind and gentle with the approach and asking what we wanted them to do. And also just giving them the space to just write and say what it is they want to say. Now, don't get me wrong. We did have some participants asking, well, I want to do it, but I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then that's when we came up, with the prompt. Well, what did you discover about yourself when you came to prison? What have you learned about life or anything during this process of your time in being incarcerated? And some of the answers, honestly, were really surprising because these people were honest about really, really, truly what they discovered about themselves, about their families, and just about this system in general. So there were many, many themes in the book, many surprises, and it's just a really great read. And I had an amazing person who, I do some restorative justice work with, and he wrote, Unwritten is a trip. And it's a trip both literally and poetic. And it's not something that you read in a day. You kind of go on this journey. You go on a journey with these people and you kind of get into their lives and get a real understanding of what it is to be incarcerated. So I really appreciate his blurb and kind of, saying what it is and the essence of this is a trip, this is a journey, these individuals sharing their story, it's not easy. And even for myself, sharing my personal story in this book, it's not always easy because you never know how it will be received or things like that. But at the end of the day, storytelling is healing. And that's one of the main reasons, why Unwritten was manifested, because healing is powerful. Healing is a way to overcome, what a lot of these individuals are dealing with. And I'm truly, truly believe that our book has allowed some of these individuals to just start their healing, And I'm clear on that just by the communication that I'm in with them, because I have a great relationship with my writers. Like they've really truly become like, my extended family. And I'm grateful for that, because I know that support when you're incarcerated means a lot. So if I could just, send them a quick note here, a package there, a phone, not a phone call, but a message there, and just to get the gratitude and thanks, it's that does it for me. So I know I answered a little bit more than you asked for, but thank you, Martha.
That's fine. I think it's clear from the stories that this process was, the writing is part of their process of healing. So do you want to read from some of the stories so folks can get a sense of the book?
Absolutely. And I'll actually begin the reading of the excerpts. I'll begin with my story, just to give you all a little bit more of an insight of who I am and what I'm doing and kind of who I'm doing this for. And the name of my piece is called Everything Happens for a Reason. And I'm a true believer of that. Everything happens for a reason. And I knew from day one meeting you was for a reason. Growing up, I was never the little girl who wanted a fairy tale wedding, but I always knew the type of love that I wanted because I knew the type of love that I give. So when I met my now husband, it wasn't a fairy tale, but I knew this love would be different. We are what some would consider an MDI because we met while he was incarcerated. We were introduced by a mutual friend, And at the onset, I was absolutely not interested at all. However, after much persistence by my husband's part, we decided to write each other. And for the next six months, we wrote. And what began as a platonic correspondence morphed into a friendship, cultivating into a reflection of love that I could have never imagined. A love not muddled by sex, but a genuine friendship and admiration. And yes, some lust, but for the most part, at the core of it, we were friends first, and we really got to truly know each other. And here we are, what will be 12 years in March, and we'll coming up on our 8-year anniversary in August of 2022. And when I tell you this has been one hell of a journey, it's been everything from comprised of a year of suspensions of our visits. We've had many trips to the box where he was in AKA solitary confinement. My husband had not one, but 2 trials that unfortunately was not successful on our behalf. And we were shuttled through various facilities throughout New York State, some as most as 8 hours away from the city. So as you can imagine, this experience has definitely been a journey, but we've allowed this experience to empower us and enable us to find purpose and intersections through various books, such as the Prosperity Bible, the 4 Agreements, and even the Holy Bible. We even began our own business in 2017, a brand called Cause Karma, which utilizes proceeds to help families that are supporting incarcerated loved ones. But this past year has especially been trying due to COVID-19. Imagine not being able to see your loved one for 6 months, not even knowing if they're okay. And when you are able to see them, you can't even hug them, hold their hand, or even give them a kiss. This pandemic has crumbled many, many families. And I pray on the daily for my husband's mental, as I see him fall into these frequent windows of despair, hopelessness, and depression. And as his wife, it's been heartbreaking to witness these episodes, because one of my husband's greatest characteristics is his mindset and his ability to discern the good in any situation. So noticing his sudden changes in his behavior and his moods is what keeps me in complete action. I will continue to love on him and be his support and encourage him while being his voice to the world. My goal is to change, transform, and of course, freedom for all. And as my husband likes to often say, if we don't fight for something, we will fall for anything. Well, let me tell you this, I'm here to fight for not only my husband, but I'm here to fight for all of those and change the stigmas associated with those that are incarcerated and end mass incarceration. So thank you for listening to my story. Everything happens for a reason. Next, I would like to read a poem from one of my participants. Her name is Mrs. Anna Adams, AKA Ladybug. And her poem name is called Hold On. Hold on. As I always taught you, my child, hold on. I make this affirmation to support this advice. Hold on to hard times because it will help you appreciate the good times. Hold on to love because it will help you understand how to let go of hate. Hold on to hope because it's the only thing that conquers fear. Hold on to strength, for it is the cure to weakness. Hold on to faith, for it's the tools against doubt. Hold on to victory, for it is the reminder of defeat. Hold on to the light, for it will guide you through the dark. And hold on to knowledge, for it is the remedy for ignorance. And hold on to me, as I will continue to hold on to you. Think about it. And that was from Miss Anna Adams, AKA Ladybug. And I just have 2 more pieces that I would love to read from participants of the book. And this comes from an individual, his name is Mr. Mario Castro. And I've really grown to, have a great relationship with Mario. And, when I first read his piece, I was moved by it because he's talking about situations that people don't really talk about on the inside. And if they do, it's very quiet. His piece is about 5 pages, so I'm only going to read an excerpt from it, but I feel the excerpt that was chosen will give you a great understanding of the full story that he was telling. In my 14-year prison sentence, I have gotten up close and personal with the often neglected issue that is mental health. In an unrelated occasion, a neighbor I had once gagged and choked on his last breath while a few of us screamed for medical assistance. The man had hung himself, and the medical assistant was too late to save him from himself. By they were running too late, before that moment, it was too late. They failed him at that moment. His conviction rendered him nothing more than his DIN number. The system was running late when no proper treatment was ever in place. Even though the prison staff and medical department knew what happened, nobody came to me or my neighbors to see if we needed to talk about what had happened. We were expected to be all right, just like that my nameless neighbor was expected to manage his suicide thoughts on his own. Today, I raise my voice the way I did for my nameless neighbor that sadly ended his life. For all the incarcerated brothers and sisters that are tossed into cages without any serious concern for their state of mind, the criminal justice system is systemically engaging in inhumane behavior they claim to be trying to correct. And those in charge only seem to care about meeting quotas. I raise my voice because mental health disorders and unaddressed traumas are faceless enemies that clearly don't discriminate between prisoners and prison staffs. Mental health is a problem that runs deep in prisons. And I just want to say that is one of the initiatives that I am working with with AFJ. We have a mental health initiative that we're embarking on right now to try to impose into the New York State prison systems to give individuals just basic needs to help with their mental health. Just basic needs, because at the end of the day, not everyone that's incarcerated has someone to talk to. So my goal or my hope and wish is that eventually people that are incarcerated will have opportunities and spaces to talk to people that are in mental health spaces, because they're out there and willing and wanting to provide services. There's just no system in place to do that. So I have one final piece that I would love to read, and I'm going to read Mr. Brandon Mcgrady's piece in its entirety. Fellowship beyond the bars. I pray that what you guys are doing will shed some light on this prison system, and more people will join your fight and to change the system. And I want to thank you guys for reaching out to me. Here are my thoughts, and anything you guys would like, just let me know to write specifically, but I'm just going to write from my heart. My name is Brandon Mcgrady, and I'm 34 years old. And I was charged and convicted of an intentional murder in the 2nd degree and was sentenced to 25 years to life. I have currently served 17 years of that sentence. So now I have had as much time in prison as I had in the streets. I'm the only boy out of 7 children on my mom's side. I grew up in a house with 6 young sisters. I have a daughter that's 16, a stepdaughter that's 6, and a wife that I've been married to for 3 years, but we've known each other since we were 15. What I don't understand about the system is what happened to the rehabilitation part. I have been incarcerated for 17 years and nobody has come to see if I have been rehabilitated. I have been in Attica Correctional Facility for the last 12 years. And in that time, I have only caught 2 misbehavior reports. And when I got to Attica, I was 21 years old. And since then, I haven't had any misbehavior reports. Throughout my incarceration, I was able to obtain my GED, complete an anger management program, take welding as a vocation, and participate in a youth assistant program to help kids like me with sharing my story. I even got a law certificate to become a law library clerk to help others with their cases, and I'm currently working the lawns and grounds in the facility. So why do we have these systems in place? So why do we have system in place to determine if a person has been rehabilitated and is ready to enter society? Only thing I can see is that they are trying to keep people locked up. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't be punished for their crimes, but how long and why is there not a system in place to determine when someone is ready to be re-entered into society? I clearly have shown a pattern of nonviolent, but there is nobody in place to determine or evaluate who I am today. Now that the pandemic has made its way, it's been over a year, and it's been hard for families to keep their family ties. The Department of Corrections has suspended our visits, and it was for the protection of us from the virus. But here it is after all these months and the suspensions, and has all these months, and there are still positive cases going around. I'm still at risk because there are staff members who come in and out of the facility every day, but we are still suffering at their mishandling of the situation. I'm even more at a risk for my mental and spiritual health. I have a wife, I have 2 daughters, I haven't hugged in over a year. But here it is, the governor of New York is allowing fans in sports arenas. Well, why can't we have the same procedure for people that are in place that are incarcerated with our families? Everything they do is designed to destroy families instead of trying to bring us together, like they say. That's the big part of rehabilitation, right? Keeping and bringing families together. This system in our country has been put in place. The system that our country has in place doesn't work. It's destroying more than helping. And this cycle will continue unless they open their eyes. A lot of people make mistakes when they are not educated and do foolish things out of ignorance. And it's the smartest way for them to chain of the families and save communities. Rehabilitation. What does that really mean to someone who is incarcerated? Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Talking about, as that gentleman did, about rehabilitation reminds me of one of the things that you wrote or that you edited from Dominic Denard. And this is such a short and very succinct and so such a true statement. He says, "I am not the person I was when I was arrested." I've heard that in other places too. I've heard that in Sing Sing before. People say, "I'm not the person I was 17 years ago." You know what? I'm not the person I was 17 years ago. And so what you're bringing up is, again, if someone is doing the rehabilitation, when is that going to be measured? When is it going to be stated that they have successfully done what they've been asked to do. We're going to open to questions in just a minute or two. Anyone who wants to put a question into the chat, please do, because Aisha will certainly answer them. But before we go to that, I wanted to ask you about something that I know is dear to your heart, and that is Project Reset and the issue of restorative justice, which gets into the idea of accountability as an alternative to mass incarceration. What can you tell us about that, Aisha?
Yes, Project Reset. I've been a community volunteer with Project Reset for about a year now. And Project Reset is a sub-organization that is a part of the larger conglomerate of CCI, the Center for Court Innovation. And Project Reset is an organization that takes cases that happen in the community, i.e. the Bronx, because I work with Project Reset Bronx, and we take cases that happen with individuals that commit low-level crimes. And this is a way for them to be accountable for their crimes, but avoid jail time and going through the court process. Now, you have to be selected to be a part of Project Reset through the district attorney's office. She presents cases to Project Reset, and they go through a process of the intake of talking about what their crime was, and then agreeing to sit in a 2-hour and 15-minute restorative justice circle where we basically just talk about what you're feeling. What were you feeling when that arrest happened? What was your day like before that arrest happened? Me being a community volunteer with Project Reset, it allows me to come in as a community volunteer, and I'm not a staff member. So once I start sharing my story and who I am, I notice that a lot of the participants feel a little bit more comfortable because they see that, oh, she's just someone that lives in the community. She's not here to judge what I've done. She's not here to look down on what I've done. She's here actually to just listen to me and give me not advice, because we never give advice. We can only share our stories, and we share our stories, which will hopefully shed light on there's another way, or there's alternatives to what has done, or what has, the crime that has been committed. And I just really, really enjoy being in Circle, not only as a participant, but I enjoy being a facilitator. And I, started my own healing space for Circle, which, I truly, truly love, because as I said, I'm a firm believer in storytelling is healing, giving people a space to share how they're feeling, connect with others, and understanding that, hey, I'm feeling like that too. Or, wow, I have gone through that. This is how I overcame that. And maybe you can too. So what we do in Project Reset, it's really incredible, because a lot of these participants come on not really knowing what they're going to do, but by the end, they leave feeling like, thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the space to listen to me without judgment. A lot of these participants have been incarcerated before, and they don't want to go back, and everyone makes mistakes. But everyone doesn't deserve to go to prison. And I'm grateful for our organizations like Project Reset that gives individuals a chance to avoid jail time. So it's a really great program. And I'm really looking forward to training and learning more, because there are opportunities for Project Reset to have circles with individuals that are at a more higher crime, felony, violent crimes, and things like that, because those people deserve spaces to talk about and be held accountable for, the crime that they've done, but also to speak to the person who they've committed that crime against. Because a lot of the times, when individuals go to court, they're just looking at a judge and their lawyers and things like that. they really never have a chance to have a one-on-one with the people that have been affected by it. So I really am a believer that Project Reset and their restorative justice circles are a way for people to not only start healing, but start listening to each other. Because I feel like listening to people, that's how we expand our knowledge and just expand our compassion and our empathy for others, because what you don't know, you don't know. So that's what Project Reset is for me.
Thanks so much. I mean, this reminds me, one of the things that I was reading on restorative justice was pointing out that our criminal justice system is set up for people not to take responsibility, because when you go to court, you basically don't confront the person who may have been injured by what you did, and you're constantly having to defend yourself against something else. So it's only a restorative justice process that allows someone really to be accountable, to take accountability, take responsibility for what they did, which is very, I mean, it sounds like you're experiencing that, but it's very different from what generally happens in our criminal justice or injustice system. So we have one question here. Someone saying, thank you so much for sharing your work, and I greatly admire your courage and determination. And the question is whether you have a framework for a program, what kind of program of rehabilitation can you imagine seeing in the prison system? Are there any programs that are working in that arena that you're aware of?
Well, what I would love to see is more support groups for incarcerated individuals. You know, as I said, you know, I'm doing a lot of work around restorative justice, but I'm also, you know, embarked on my own healing journey. And I feel, you know, everything that I'm learning, you know, in my own process, I share with my husband in the hopes that he shares with his neighbor and then shares with his neighbor, because I feel communication matters and sharing knowledge matters as well. So I would love to see more support for the individuals amongst themselves in the facilities with training opportunities. You know, there are programs in the prisons, but a lot of these programs have been shut down due to COVID. A lot of them are not accessible to the incarcerated individuals. So I would love to see programs that are universal for all, not specific to this facility or that facility. And I would love to, you know, see the crisis hotline implemented that, you know, we're really pushing the needle with, because as I said, you know, a lot of these individuals really lack the basic needs of communication. You know, my husband is very fortunate to have me, but I've seen people who they don't have anyone, you know, they don't get a visit, they don't get phone, you know, use the phone, they don't have people on their tablet. So I would just love for individuals that are incarcerated to have a space where they could reach out to someone and they'll be there to talk to them, because a lot of these people really truly just want to be heard. You know, they want to be heard and not forgotten, because unfortunately that's what it is. When people are incarcerated, they are forgotten. But I'm here to let you know that they're not forgotten, that these are people, you know, they are humans. Yes, they've made mistakes, but they deserve a space too, you know, they deserve a space.
Yeah, Aisha, one of the things we've been trying to say is that incarcerated folks are, in some cases, our families, but in all cases, our neighbors and our fellow citizens. And that's the kind of awareness I think that we really need to work harder on. I want to ask you a little bit more about the work that the mental health group is working on within AFJ. You know, we heard one of the gentlemen that you read from, Mr. Castro, talk about, you know, mental health being a significant challenge inside. You know, in the case of the 2 years of pandemic, it's become a major issue outside. So we can imagine how much more inside. What is your group? Because I'm not in your group, I'm in another group. What is your group within AFJ doing with regard to the issue of mental health inside?
Yes, well, currently we are, developing strategies on how we can improve the mental health for those who are inside. So currently we're working on a Google form to be able to distribute to families that are impacted, kind of like a questionnaire per se, to find out what are the needs for those on the inside. Because I'm only one person, I can only speak from my own experience with my loved one, but there are over 20 facilities in New York State. So we're really trying to get a sense of what the needs are, but not only that, what they want, because not everyone doesn't want a therapist. Everyone doesn't want to be in a circle. So we're really just trying to collect data to figure out what programs are available, what their needs are, and what we can actually do to better the mental health for all that are incarcerated, because we know that it's not a good thing. Because as you said, being incarcerated is one thing, but now having COVID on top of it, that's a whole nother thing, And the fact that we are still in this pandemic, yes, it's coming to an endemic, but for those inside, they don't see that. And, just a sidebar, here we are, having all these mandates lifted and things like that. And we are still not allowed to physically touch our loved ones. Still, it's been over 2 years that I cannot touch my loved one. And as you all know, when you were in quarantine and you couldn't, go and reach and touch your family, how that felt. So can you imagine what that feels like to those that are inside? Now, granted, we were just given the ability to have a hug at the beginning and the end, but in my opinion, that's not enough. That's not enough. And I will continue to raise my voice to say that that's not enough. But we're really collecting data to try to figure out the needs for those, what their needs are for mental health. And also I mentioned this crisis hotline. I have a really great relationship with some people that are in the mental health space who are doing great work around incarceration as well. And just having conversations with them, they've asked me like, hey, who do they talk to inside? Do they have someone to talk to? And that kind of really sparked the idea of what would that look like if we were able to create a hotline where there were therapists on the other side that are willing and wanting to be available to these individuals so that they can pick up the phone free of charge and call someone and talk to them and say, hey, I just need someone to talk to today. Because I don't know if any of you guys know how it works when you're incarcerated. If you're incarcerated in New York State and you say, oh, I'm not feeling good today, I'm having these suicidal thoughts, you're immediately taken to what is considered solitary, stripped of everything, and monitored for 24 hours. And to me, that's trauma in itself. So a lot of these individuals don't like to talk about the feelings and things that they're having because they feel like, I'm not going to get any real help. I'm not going to get real services. So we're really just trying to collect data to figure out what their needs are so that we could, figure out the best approach to get new services and programs in there to combat this thing called mental health.
Thank you so much. That's such important work that you're all doing. We have another question from Deborah, actually, from AFJ, who says the piece you read about there being no recognition of people in prison who have changed and rehabilitated raises the issue of parole. Isn't that what the parole system is designed to do? Can you explain something about the problems with or inadequacies in the parole system?
Yeah, well, the inadequacies that I see in the parole system, people that sit on these parole boards and things like that, they don't really have an understanding of incarceration. They look at the person who they were when they committed the crime versus looking at them who they are today. I know a lot of people that have gone up to the board and who have documented of things that they've accomplished during their time being incarcerated. But because that crime that they did however many years ago, they still have that scarlet letter on them and they've immediately hit with another 2 years. And it's just a cycle that continues. You go to the board, you don't make it, you go back for another 2 years. And I don't know about you guys, but 2 years, that's a long time to think about, wow, I got another 2 years before I can even be considered to have, be up for parole again. But we also need to think about programs for when individuals do come home. Because yes, we can talk about the rehabilitation that they have when they're inside, but what programs are out here to really help them thrive when they are out here? Because in all honesty, when you're incarcerated, you do walk around with this scarlet letter on you. You do, and it's unfortunate. So I would really love to see a world where we kind of look past who they were and look at more who they are today.
Aisha, we had one person write that says, what you do sounds like, I think with regard to the Project Reset, what you do sounds a lot like the 12-step meetings, which have been so helpful to healing for decades to millions of people. And then follows up with a question, how open have the powers that be been to some of your, to quote this person, wonderful, impactful suggestions? What has been the reaction, if there has been any at all?
Well, I will say there has been some impactful responses to the things that we want to do, because thankfully we are aligned with an amazing organization, the Alliance for Families of Justice, and they have a great reputation, starting with the founder, Ms. Sophia Elijah. So I feel like she gives us an opportunity for us to think about what we want to see change and then bring that to light. There are opportunities for us to meet with legislators to, talk about legislative changes for bills. We have opportunities where we, go on media and talk about what the strategies and initiatives that we're doing. And thankfully, I even have spaces where, next month, I'll be hosting a workshop to talk about this book and many of the topics that we discussed tonight at the Legislative Caucus weekend in Albany. And my hope is that we make some noise and awareness to really have some change affected, specifically the idea of giving families the right back to touch their loved ones. So I can't necessarily say that the powers have heard us, but they're listening and they know what we're doing. So we will definitely continue to, do what we're doing. And we know that this fight continues and it will continue until we see, the real change that we want to see.
Thanks. I just want to point out that Judy Clark has put into the chat that there are two major pieces of legislation being considered in this legislative session that could change the terrible parole policies that keep people in prison endlessly, elder parole and fair and timely parole. So, yeah, so just to remind folks that they can check that out in the chat. Sandy, did you want to raise a question? I see your hand.
Yeah, I live in the Boston area and I've been involved with different programs dealing in the criminal justice system and for a while. And I'm wondering, also, I've been interested in international approaches, such as in Germany and Norway, that have a much more enlightened and totally rehabilitative approach. I understand that there's been some forays from the United States to visit these programs. And I believe one of them was a warden from New York. I'm not sure, but it was some Eastern state. So I'm just wondering, is there any way that you guys are able to use information from other states or countries to help to support your point, or to support the approach that you're advocating, or mostly to show them that they don't have to be afraid to take a chance with prisoners that want to get out, that you feel deserve to be out? Because I think sometimes it's not just punitive, but it's also fearful on their part that something will go wrong and they'll get blamed for it. So is there any national coordination among people that are doing all kinds of programs within their state, or their a particular prison program, or even international?
Well, I don't know anything about international currently, but I do know that there are programs in other states that we hopefully will eventually will make its way to New York State. As we know, every state has their own policies and things like that when it comes to what actually happens in prisons and the type of programs that are available. I've been doing some training with an actual organization that does work in the prisons in the Boston, Massachusetts area. But it's at the very beginning, so I'm really not versed on, what exactly, I can't say too much, but I do know that we've aligned ourselves with many organizations that are, doing this work to try to collaborate to figure out what's working over there and can we bring it here, and vice versa. So there definitely has been collaboration, with other organizations and things like that. And it's ironic that you bring up, prison systems in other countries, because, working for my publisher, that was one of the books that kind of charged, my advocacy. One of my authors, her name is Baz Dreschinger, and she published a book called Incarceration Nations. And it basically talks about, what the prison system is in various countries, and one of them being Norway, and just the difference of what it really, really means to have restorative rehabilitation while being incarcerated. I mean, that book is really incredible. And not to, try to plug, what I do for my work, but Incarceration Nations is it's a great read if you're, wanting to understand, the prison system in, other countries outside of the United States.
I'll just throw in that in the Boston area, Partakers is one, a college behind bars is associated with them. And then there's another one called Transforming Prison Project. And that involves circles of former offenders and people who want to be involved with former offenders, and with this sharing circle. And that seems to be taking off. So anyway, thank you so much for doing this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that information.
Thanks for that question, which really gave us a lot to talk about. Deborah has her hand up, at least her virtual hand here in the Zoom room. So Deborah, you're on.
Thanks, Jim. Two things in response to the last question. One of the things the Mental Health Committee at AFJ is doing is drafting a letter advocating for recognition of the inadequacy of mental health services in New York State prisons. And that letter, if it goes out, will be signed by mental health professionals around New York State. and then it will go out to the powers that be. And some of the work cited in that letter is, in fact, international work. The World Health Organization has a very important summary of research on mental health in prisons, and we cite that work. The other thing I'll say, just to talk about how the US is just a different animal. New York City sent a group of people working in city government to view the prisons in Norway, looking for another model. That was in 2019, and Rikers is still what it is today. So it is very, very hard to lift the models from Northern Europe and Western Europe, which are much more rehabilitatively focused, into this country, which has such a punishment orientation. That's all.
Thanks, Deborah. Yes, with such an emphasis on the punitive nature of prisons, as opposed to the rehabilitative purpose, it is a real challenge. But you know, we can't quit. We can't give up. Marie, you have your hand up. What would you like to say?
I just wanted to jump off what Deborah said. Is the truth is our system was set up, as we know, the new Jim Crow. I mean, that's what it's about. And we have a political battle, you know, as well as every other kind of battle. And I bless you for your work. You're doing such a beautiful job, and you're such a strong woman and a beautiful woman. And yeah, as we used to say back in the day, we have to keep on keeping on. But it's a hard fight, and we are the only country, as far as I know. I mean, there may be others that I've read about over the years and seen Michael Moore's wonderful movie about that. People are in prison, you do a crime, you pay whatever, you know, whatever it is, and then you are rehabilitated, or at the very least, you're not worse than when you came in. And then you can go home and have a life. This is not our prison system. And it's hard work. And again, bless you. Bless you.
We probably have time for another question or two. So please, if you have something, please put it into the chat, and we'll announce it, and Aisha will try to answer it. Aisha, I was going to ask you, and this basically is good information for everyone who's on this call. The great thing about the book is that every story is very individual. You don't figure like everybody's going to say the same thing. Everybody doesn't say the same thing. Everybody says something that is very unique to their situation, which reminds us that people on the inside are just like people on the outside in the sense of individuals. So I'm wondering, did you find that what was the overall reaction to folks who got the chance to tell their story in the book? I mean, have you followed up with them? I mean, is there any sense of feeling like they've made a point that they perhaps were not able to make before? What have you heard?
Yes, actually, I've heard many thanks. You know, when we first released the book in December, you know, our goal was to get it out to participants because, you know, we knew that they were excited to see their work actually printed. So there was a little bit of delay with getting, you know, the books inside, you know, sometimes a little bit of bureaucracy with, you know, what can go inside and what can't. So thankfully the books did make its way in, and immediately we started getting responses of, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Thank you so much. You know, finally, someone listened to me. Like, I'm in a book, you know, just the excitement of that they did something that they felt was meaningful and that their voices will be heard by the right people. And just the amount of gratitude that we've received from these individuals, you know, is one thing that I constantly hold on to, is that unwritten to me is a responsibility. You know what I mean? Because these individuals have entrusted me, entrusted us with their stories. And I'm just here to just share them, you know, share them as best as I can, get it in front of as many eyes as I can, but into the right hands as well, you know, because at the end of the day, I really truly want to help people. And if I could help one person in this book, I would just be over the moon with, you know, gratitude of, wow, you know, something really positive came from this. And yeah, they're just it's a really great group. Like, I'm really blessed that we were able to, you know, contact these individuals and just have them be a part of this and be so thankful, you know. And like I said, you know, this book is not about dollars and cents for me, because all of the proceeds goes back to the incarcerated individuals. So, you know, this book is definitely a pay it forward moment, because, you know, as I know, it's expensive, you know, to care for your loved one when they're incarcerated. You know, you have to pay for everything, you know. So if we could help just a little bit, you know, by giving these individuals something, you know, something sustainable, some monetary payment, I'm all for it. And they are very, very grateful for everything. And also just the community that we're building, you know, because I'm all about community. And I'm very grateful, you know, that I have my little, I call ourselves the BTB family, Beyond the Bars family.
Thank you so much, Aisha. This has been really terrific. I think we're gonna wind down or wrap up, but I wanted to ask you if you had any final thoughts you want
You were going a little in and out,
Sure.
Mark, but I think I heard the end.
with the group before
You're breaking up so much, Martha, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Jim, do you
Yeah.
want to take over?
Sorry, you know, you never know with Zoom. What Martha actually was
Very frustrating. I'll turn off my video, maybe that.
okay. Yeah, Martha was just basically going to ask you, Aisha, if there's any final comment or final thought that you would like to extend to our group tonight.
Well, again, I want to thank you, Jim and Martha, for, you know, this opportunity tonight to be here with your community. You know, when you guys asked me, I was very overwhelmed with just the thanks of, you know, wow, you want me to come speak to your group? Thank you. So I'm very thankful, you know, that you took the time to read the book and, you know, felt its impact enough to want to have me here with your community. So I thank you all, you know, for being here with me tonight and listening to some of the stories, you know, what I'm doing. And the fight continues, you know. As I said, I'm very highly aligned with AFJ, and we will continue, you know, doing the work that we're doing there. But, you know, I will continue to do my work individually as well, you know, in spaces that work for me, you know, because as I said, I'm all about building community, healing, and I am a firm, true believer that restorative justice can be a way, you know, restorative and healing circles are necessary in this thing that we call mass incarceration. So just thank you. I thank you all for, you know, being here, taking time out of your evening, and thank you so much.
Well, it's been our pleasure. It's been our honor. It's been our joy, really, to have you with us tonight, Aisha. And thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for the book. For those, again, who would like to order the book, Martha has put the URL in the chat. Unwritten BTB www.bigcartel.com. So please order it if you'd like to read it. It's definitely, as Aisha said at the beginning, it's not a book you sit down and read at one time. It's a book that you can read a chapter or two and then put it down for a while and contemplate what you've read. It's really one of those kinds of books that you will go back to again and again. We have a few things we wanted to mention to our two communities, our BJ and St. Paul and St. Andrew communities, about things that are coming up. Two of the items that I wanted to mention: the Poor People's Campaign is coming to New York City with a march and a mass meeting on Monday, April 11. We would like to let you know that if you have the opportunity to come to that march, to meet at Battery Park at 4:30 on Monday, the 11th of April. There will be about a 1-hour march through Wall Street. And then at 6 o'clock inside Trinity Church, Wall Street, a mass meeting with speeches and testimonies from people who are directly impacted by poverty, as well as music and some other activities. I'm going to put in the chat the website for that. Another thing that's coming up that we want to make all the folks who live on the Upper West Side aware of is the fact that the Fortune Society, which has been doing very good work for about 50 years in terms of providing residences and also programming for people coming out of incarceration, is in the process of securing a building at 97th between Broadway and West End. We don't know exactly what the reaction will be in the community for that, but we're anticipating that if there is a need, if there is some opposition to that, if there is some of the sort of NIMBY reaction to that, that our two congregations can perhaps provide a positive, can be a positive force for helping to the Fortune Society to be able to secure that building and continue the good work that they're already doing up at around 140th Street when they come to the Upper West Side. So again, we'll keep you informed about that. Now, Martha had a couple of things. Martha, I don't know, maybe if you...
I came onto another computer, so I think you can hear me now, right?
So, yeah, we can hear you. So I know that you have some things that you wanted to mention, so please do.
Okay, so one is to let folks know that as kind of a continuation of the BJ SPSA trip to the South a couple of years ago, Jonathan Reese has organized a tour with Black Gotham that's going to be taking place on Thursday, May 5th. This is an organization that does walking tours of parts of New York and exploring Black history. I and a number of people I see on the call did this a few years ago with them, and they're really terrific. So this one's taking place on Thursday, May 5th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The cost is approximately $35 a person, and it's going to be the Caesar's Rebellion tour about some resistance that took place in the city in the 18th century. Jonathan just put his information into the chat, so if you're interested in joining that, you can contact him. And the other thing we wanted to let you know is that BJ and SPSA are continuing, in addition to our work with AFJ, advocacy around mass incarceration. And if you are interested in participating in that or in getting involved with the Fortune Society or anything like that, please put your name and email address in the chat, along with which of these things you would like to be contacted about. And we're going to save the chat and then be able to put you in touch with the relevant folks. So if you'd like to be available as a kind of backup support team for the Fortune Society venture. Put that in, and if you want to be involved with other mass incarceration initiatives, you can put that in. And if you want to be involved with the People's Campaign, Poor People's Campaign, please put that in. And I think with that, we will thank you all for coming and being here. And again, Aisha, thank you so much for your work on the book and for all that you're doing and for sharing so much with us this evening. It was really terrific.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martha, Jim. I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night.
Good night.